One of the advantages of being hard of hearing is that you don't hear anything like that. So Rabbi Yitzchak over here went back to when we were talking about we cited the Gemara where Reb Shimon Bar Yochai and Reb Yehuda were commenting about the achievements of the Romans, and Reb Yehuda said, you know, how beautiful were their achievements, their marketplaces, their bathhouses. What's the other one?
Bridges.
Huh?
Bridges.
The bridges. And Reb Shimon said that they were all done for very self-serving, self-indulgent, hedonistic reasons, and as a result of his critical comments, he had to flee because there was a decree against him. They were looking to execute him, and Rabbi Yehuda was rewarded. So Rabbi Yitzchak's question was, what was Rabbi Yehuda, well, where was he coming from? It would seem that Reb Shimon was being honest, and that Rabbi Yehuda was somehow something. Flatterer. I mean, we can't accuse him really of any sycophancy, because there were no Romans there.
I forgot my thesaurus. That was it.
I mean, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, maybe today have to be called a fanatic, because when he came out of the cave and he said, so how can people be working? I mean, maybe they were both being. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not understood him. They were both being honest, but he was being very canoistic about Reb Shimon.
And we noted that they were both putting their emphasis on the same thing. In other words, one's diuk was maybe on the Romans, and one was on the outcomes. I don't know. I'm just asking. Do you agree that they were both?
To get controversial, not that
What?
I would like to get controversial, but this sounds like the Havdil, I guess we could say the Havdil, somewhat of the Israel Tzioni question. In other words, on one side the government says, they do it, but at least they do it, whatever the reasons are that they're doing it, versus the other side would say, but they're not doing it for the right reasons. So that would be fun to talk about.
Should have microphone. Let's get the shul shut down.
So let me just understand. Your emphasis is on this crowd, or it's on? No.
It would be fun in any crowd. It would be funner in a different, even more fun. People that wouldn't come to the shiur.
Employ somewhat really. It's maybe employ somewhat really.
I know we're probably going over some old territory here, but so for those of you who are a little bit older, you won't mind because you don't remember. My son claims that when he went in, I have 3 of my 4 sons are in the rabbinate, so they say drushes, and they're all excellent, by the way, they really are. But one of them, my son Yankee, said that when he started doing drushes, so he solicited some advice from somebody. So they told him that he should be very careful about not repeating a joke, because people remember jokes. He said that they told him that a story he could repeat once a year, because by the time a year goes by, people have remembered this. He said, but a Dvar Torah he can repeat like several times in an hour. Nobody will remember it. So I'm not sure whether we covered this territory, but it is somewhat relevant to the topic. I might have mentioned would have mentioned it tonight. When Noah comes out of the ark after the flood, so he has this very this very troubling incident where he drinks and he's exposed. So his two sons, Shem and Yefes, whereas Chum does something which is very shameful. Shem and Yefes take a simla, some kind of a garment or a blanket, and they put it on their shoulders. They walk backwards so they won't see their father's shame, and they cover up the nakedness of their father, and their faces were turned away, and they didn't see his nakedness. So Rashi over here says that Shem was the one who really took the initiative here, and because it says Vayikach Shem v'Yefes. Vayikach is singular. It doesn't say Vayikchu, they took. It says Vayikach, he took. So Limeid al Shem shenis amitz v'mitzvah yoysa miyefes. That Shem was more invested in this mitzvah more than Yefes. Lekach zochu bonav l'talish shel tzitzis. That's why Shem's descendants, meaning Avram's descendant of Shem, and Shem's descendants were zeicha to the garment of tzitzis, whereas Yefes was zocha likvura lebanav. Yefes, the merit that Yefes has for being involved in this mitzvah is that in the Machama of Gog and Magog, when there will be all of these catastrophic casualties, where the armies of Gog and Magog will all be destroyed and they'll lie in the field open. So it says, Etin l'Gog Mekayim Sham Keva, Makim Sham Keva, that they'll be buried. They won't suffer the indignity of lying naked in the field. V'cham shebizas aviv, so he's gonna. It says that they'll be exposed to shame and embarrassment. So the question over here is it the initiative that determined the fact that one got a mitzvah and one is going to get burial, or something more than that? So I proposed that there were different motives here, or different different mindsets. Shem went to fulfill the mitzvah of honoring his parent. He did it because it was a value. He did it because it was some kind of a spiritual value. So the reward for that is a spiritual value. So you get a garment of tzitzis. Yefes did not do it because it was a mitzvah. Yefes did it because it offended his sense of beauty. Yefes, like his name, his essence was being drawn to things that were attractive, that were beautiful. This offended his sense of beauty. So his reward was that his children will not suffer the indignity of something that would offend the senses. So they'll be buried. The blessing that Yefes receives here is Yafta lekim leyefes v'yishken ba'alei Shem. So Rashi says that means that even though that the second Beis HaMikdash will be built by Koresh, who is of the descendants of Yefes, but the Shechina will not rest in the second Beis HaMikdash because they didn't have the Shechina rests in the first Beis HaMikdash, which was built by Shlomo HaMelech, who is of this. So Yafta lekim leyefes, the second Beis HaMikdash was more beautiful than the first, but the Yishken B'alei Shem, the Shechina will rest in there.
Sorry, I didn't catch the connection between this pasuk and the two Batei Mikdash.
What?
After looking at Yefes, how does that relate to the Beis Hamikdash?
The second Beis HaMikdash was more beautiful than the first.
Right.
So Yefes, Yafta lekim leyefes, it'll be from the concept of beauty. In any event,
The distinction, I think Rav Soloveitchik says etiquette versus ethics.
right, very good.
Shem had
Right.
ethics in mind, and you had etiquette.
Right. One of the offshoots of this Yafta lekim leyefes is somehow, and I'm not sure exactly how this works, that a Sefer Torah that's written Biksav something. What? Yeah, but it has something to do with right. And either it's translated and or it's a script is that, but that it's a kosher Sefer Torah. So there's something about Yefes, which, despite the fact that it's not classic Loshen Kodesh, whatever, or Ksav Ashuris, but it's acceptable because of this Yafta lekim leyefes. So there's no question about the fact that there is a place for beauty in our spiritual exercises, in our rituals, in our mitzvahs. You know, there's a concept of zakil yanvehu. You're supposed to beautify mitzvahs. So people will buy nice kiddush cups, and they'll buy nice esrog pushkas and Neiru Shabbos and nice film, nice covers for Sifrei Torah. I mean, there's a mitzvah of yipui. There's a mitzvah of beauty, and there perforce if there's a mitzvah in beauty, that means that there is some kind of a sanctity attached to beauty. There's some kind of a divine expression in the beauty.
and ask it. But we often say, on mitzvahs, we say that's Zeh Keli Van Veil. We take it from there. Is the Rav saying from this passage for Yefes?
No, we do take Mizakir on veil. That's probably where the priority for what I'm saying. But you see from here that there is some value to this, because it emerges in the fact that it's acceptable when it comes to some expression. I don't remember exactly what it was. Some expression of Sefer Torah. So. So if Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is the champion of Seid. He is the champion of what goes on deep in the recesses of the hidden recesses of. So when he looks at the world, that's what he sees. He sees the operating system, and if he and there's no question about the fact that his assessment of why Romans did what they did was accurate. They were not moved by any kind of particularly inspiring motivations. They were, everything that he said about them was true. That was the reality that he related to, and when Rabbi Yehuda admired what the Romans had done, he felt that he had to comment on the fact that these things were not driven by very exalted motives, and perhaps he needed to do that so that people would not get too attached to those things, that they would not only that they wouldn't admire the Romans for doing that, but that they need to understand that becoming too close to those things was going to, there was radiation coming from those things, and that radiation was not in their benefit. So Rabbi Yehuda related to the beauty, and related to the beauty because there is a certain godliness in beauty. And when a person looks at the beauty of the world and can exclaim, Marabu Masecha Hashem, Kulam Chachma Sisa, there's, and it says in Pirkei Avos that if somebody is journeying and Elech Baderech, and he says, and he's Isaac in Torah, and then he says, Ma'noai Ilan Zeh, how beautiful is this tree? So he's Mischai Benafshay. It's like, it's a serious offense. So one of the Mefarshim says that there's a very important word there. It says that if he's Isaac Batera and he's mafsik, if a person looks at the world and sees Torah in the world, that's not a hefsek. That's not an interruption. It's an extension of the fact that he is engaged in seeing HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He sees HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Torah, he sees HaKadosh Baruch Hu in nature. The problem is that if he interrupts, if he's engaged in Torah, and when he looks at nature, he doesn't see God. That's where it's a serious departure, because he's not. And you have to have some kind of a mindset. My grandfather, the previous, the Bogdalovi, my grandfather was killed by the Nazis in Lvov. But when he was once walking with this Hasidim, so it was a kind of a country walk, and one of the Hasidim, as he was walking, he tore off a leaf off of a bush, and they were walking by, he tore off a leaf. So my grandfather stops and said to him, "What did you just do?" He said, "I don't know. What did I do?" He said, "You just tore off a leaf." So he said, "I did." So he said, "Why?" He said, "I don't know. I was walking by and it was there and I tore it off." He said, There's nothing arbitrary in the universe. He said this leaf was singing a Shiur to Rabbi Michel. So if you needed it, so then you elevated it because you needed it, and a human being's Shiur is greater than that. But he says you tore it off for no good reason. He says you just stopped. You just stopped the Shiur of this leaf for no good reason. So, what?
I thought there wasn't Musa about Hasidim.
So Rabbi Yehuda comments on the fact that there is beauty in what the Romans do, and that the things that they do or can serve a useful function for people who are B'nai Torah. Bridges are useful for people who are B'nai Torah, and a Schwitz, Erev Shabbos, is very good for people who are B'nai Torah, and what's the third thing? And a shuk, yeah, a shuk is good. You go out and buy tzorchei Shabbos. And there are certainly useful things that come of this, but each of them was relating to a different aspect. Yehuda was relating to the fact that there is something which is sacred in beauty, and Reb Shimon issued a warning: be careful, because what's behind it is not altruistic.
So then we're fighting the fight, according to Chaim's question. It's an honest fight.
So what?
And according to Chaim's question, we're fighting the honest fight.
We're fighting an honest fight. I think that we have to relate to, it's a multidimensional thing, that we live in a multidimensional reality, which is, and certainly in the early days of the state, the intentions of the secular Zionists was very anti-religious, and they had an agenda which was, which in a certain sense is emerging now, and the children of the Sephardim came here from Yemen and Morocco and all those different places, and they did some absolutely wicked things, because they had an agenda. Not that there aren't pockets of that agenda today, but I don't believe that there's all that malevolence in what the government does today. I mean, I don't think they're building a shuk for the reasons that Reb Shimon suggested. They're not. I may not be building it to make it comfortable for people to build the Beis Hamikdash, but it's probably not a immoral reason. I was walking with, when my son Yankee was living here, I was walking with him on Shabbos, and we were walking down one street and coming down another street where a group of Hasidic-looking people, it's hard to tell because the Yerushalmis look Hasidic, and there was a fellow with a long white beard and Hasidic dress. And my son pointed him out and said he just came back from South America, where he met a twin brother. And it turns out that when this person's mother, way back in the beginning of the state, when she gave birth to twins, that they told her that one of the twins had died at childbirth, and they sold the child to a Catholic family in South America.
Who's that?
He didn't,
The Medina.
huh?
Who? The parents or the Medina?
No, the Medina. The parents didn't know. They told the mother that the one child had died. Meanwhile, they had sold the child, and he found out about it just a short time before, and he journeyed to South America to meet his twin brother, who had been raised as a Catholic. I mean, there was nothing he could do, but they did some. They had an agenda. But that we need to be cautious about the marketplace. That part of it is true. There's a lot of wonderful things in the marketplace. I mean, a perfect example of the kind of caution that we need to do is what's happening with the internet. It's in some ways it's a terrific boon, and on the other hand, it's extraordinarily disruptive. So under the best of circumstances, you have people who are addicted to the web, and even though you're not addicted, you're addicted. So you spend whatever it is, time going througit your emails and going through and searching through the bargains that you can get on the it's time. It's a lot of time. And then you have people who waste extraordinary amounts of time. And there's games on the thing, and all kinds of interesting articles on the web, and at worst there's pornography on the web, and we've counseled many couples where the marriages have been seriously damaged because the wives have discovered the fact that their husbands are in porn. So we need to be very, very cautious and vigilant about the gifts of our modern technology. It's a challenge how to manage it. So if we had Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon today, they probably would be taking some interesting positions on the things of our technology. Reb Yehuda would certainly rail against it because of what's behind it, and Rabbi Yehuda might see all the shiurim that are on there and the benefits that that you can get by saving money.
Rabbi Yossi was quiet.
What?
The third was quiet. Rabbi Yossi was quiet.
One of them was
There's
quiet.
three then, right?
Yeah, there were three, and there were four. One of them was Yehuda ben Gerim. That was that the one?
But what's behind Rabbi Yossi being quiet? Because I understand Rav Shimon, he's pointing out a very serious problem, and Yehuda is teaching us to appreciate what's positive, and what's with Rabbi Yossi?
He's like most of us, we have no idea.
That what?
He's like most of us, we have no idea. I don't know. Like most people, he's quiet. There's no idea what.
There's a rabbi who's listening to the arguments of two litigants. So he says to the one, if he lays down his tinus, and the rabbi says to him, "Du bist gerecht, you're right." Then the other litigant comes and he said to the other one, "Du bist gerecht." So the rebbitzin is listening to this, and she comes in, she says to him, "How can he be gerecht and he be gerecht?" Well, he says, "Du bist echt gerecht." And that's Rabbi Yossi said he's listening to Rabbi Yehuda, listening to Rabbi Shimon, and they're both right. It's like there's the Jewish jurors, and they deliberated, and they come in, and the judge says to Mr. Moskowitz, "What is the verdict of the jury?" And he says, "Your Honor, the jury has decided we shouldn't mix in." So Rabbi Yossi decided shouldn't mix in. What? What about?
Reb
Rav
Shimon.
Shimon used the marketplace as
Ashkelon.
Ashkelon? Yeah.
He has no generators.
How far did he take his opinion? What did he do about it? How did he reconcile his opinion with the reality? Because he was living in our problem. How to reconcile our opinion with our reality? So how did Rav Shimon think he knew that was what it was for? So
You're saying before he ran for his life.
yeah. Maybe that's what he did.
Because after, when he came out, he had reconciled himself to
His question is,
one week took it. His question is on before.
He didn't reconcile himself. Lived in his own reality.
I think that's a very good point. Before this whole discussion took place, it's not unrealistic to think that Reb Shimon, Erev Shabbos, went to the bathhouse, and that when he needed to get someplace, that he took the bridge, and that when he needed to buy something for Shabbos, that he went to the shuk. So I don't remember. I don't know who said this, but they said they lived in its own reality. I think it's reasonable for Reb Shimon, who saw what was driving it, is that before he did these things, before I went into it, that he stepped into his reality. It was that he created a frame of reference for himself.
A rationalization?
No, not a rationalization. Rationalization would be an excuse. I mean, that would be making
Had to be
himself
lechatchila.
vulnerable. Huh?
You're saying it had to be lechatchila.
It had to be lechatchila. I think the lechatchila would be not unlike Rabbi Yehuda, which is that in this beauty there is godliness. In other words, there is some kedusha over here. Otherwise, even nothing can be sustained. Nothing exists without some divine energy. So he would have gone in with the intention to, in a certain sense, to use it for kedusha and elevate the divine spark that's there. So his entire interaction there would have been to relate to the divine spark therein and be aware of the darkness in which this divine spark lives. So he would have lived in his reality, which is a reality of kedusha in general, and he would have drawn that into his reality rather than him going into there. He would have taken it into him. When he went to the bathhouse, he wasn't going to the bathhouse. He was taking the bathhouse to him, and he was taking it to his reality. Somebody once asked my father, Chaim's stepfather, Howard, as we call him, Uncle Howard. Uncle Howard asked my father's how he liked being in Milwaukee. And my father said to him, I don't know. He said, I never left Honestapel. So despite the fact that he had already been, tens of years in Milwaukee, he was living in Honestapel. He was living in this little village, and essentially that was his frame of reference. He hadn't really stepped into, this new culture.
Was it such a this Gemara, is it such a big machlokas? And I don't see them. It could be I haven't learned the Gemara, but I don't see it was such a big machlokas. Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda.
No, it's not machlekes. I don't think it's certainly not machlekes. I don't think Rabbi Yitzchak saw it as a machlekes. He saw it as Rabbi Shimon. Discerned something about this reality, which Rabbi Yehuda probably would not have contested. The question is, so when Yehuda was commenting on it, where was he coming from? It's not a question of machlokes, but where is he coming from? What was behind his perspective? So we hear what we were suggesting is that his perspective was to relate to there is something, in a certain sense, there's something divine about beauty, and he was relating to that. And Rabbi Shimon issued a warning, be careful.
But wasn't there a transformation in the time he made that comment and all the time in the caves and the time he ultimately came out?
And that's what Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Yitzchak was saying, that there was a change from the beginning to the end.
Because the Rabbi Hill pointed out in Rabbi Tzadok a while back that when he went in the second time into the cave, first he came out and he had that same quality when he was leading up. When he came back, out the second time he went into Kobe Rayos, not Shemesh.
Yored is kind of empty down. So we had like where the relationship got less.
Is this related to the diyun about Esav, whether he's redeemable?
There is something in this forum about the fact that there is, at the end of time, there's something that's redeemable about Esau.
Isn't it Rabbi Yehuda that says, Halacha Yadua, that Esav Soides Yaakov?
Is that Rabbi Yehuda?
Is it Rabbi Yehuda that says that?
I don't know if Rashi identifies the source.
Look at the Rashi.
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Oh, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Halachi b'Yodua says it's
It fits in.
Rabbi Shimon.
So does Reb Shimon hold that there's something about Esav that's redeemable?
Yitzhak Avinu held that.
Right.
And his head's buried there.
There's a difference, I think, between Esau and Amalek. Amalek is not redeemable. There's a question whether or not you can accept a ger from Amalek. If an Amalekite wants to convert, whether you can say, I believe that the Rambam Paskin that he's. I'm going to ask Rabbi Haber if he remembers that.
I think it's interesting that what Rabbi Shimon does with the sun.
What?
What Rabbi Shimon does with the sun. We're always talking about like what we need, right? Rabbi Shimon takes the sun with him to the Torah. So we're always thinking like what do we do with our phones and how do we, like what do we tell our kids, like this is a tool, this is something that we, that we need. So if we better take his son with him on his opinion.
Somebody came to a Rebbe and asked him for a bracha that his children should be Talmidei Chachamim. He came to the KSY Rebbe, so KSY Rebbe said, I'm not going to give you a bracha. He said, why not? So he said, because the only thing I can tell you is that your children will do as you do. If you're coming to me for a bracha that your children should be Talmidei Chachamim, I can assure you that your children will go to tzaddikim and ask them for brachas that their children should be Talmid Chacham. If you want to be Talmid Chacham, go home and sit down and learn. So they'll emulate your example. So, the fact that Rabbi Shimon took his son is really kind of, we take our children with us in what we do, our attitude. So sometimes sometimes it's just a frown. Sometimes it's the way we open our eyes. Our children pick up on very finely nuanced kinds of things, what our attitudes are about things. So if there's some kind of music which is really not very Jewish, and you you turn your nose up against it, you delivered a message without saying a word. We give our children messages about priorities and values and things, and so how we respond to the marketplaces, and if somebody said, I don't want to go today to the marketplace because there's a lot of preachers there. There was a big lesson in that. You didn't lecture them. You just said, I'm not going to go, or I'm not going to go to to the ball game, to this pizza sandwich, and your child knows that you happen to enjoy going to ball games. So you've delivered it's a value statement.